My name is Detective Marcus Aldridge, and I need to confess something that has been eating at me for the past 6 months. Something that defies everything I thought I knew about evidence, about death, about the impossibility of a man being in 2 places at once. This is the story of Damian Corvus, the billionaire biker who died on Route 47 with his helmet shattered beside him. The same helmet I personally collected, sealed and locked away, only to watch him put it back on his head 2 hours after his death on a security camera that couldn't lie. Or so I thought. Let me start at the beginning, because the beginning is where the impossibility takes root. March 14th, 10:37 at night. I got the call while sitting in my apartment, nursing a whiskey that tasted like regret and old cases. A single-vehicle motorcycle accident on Route 47, just outside the Corvus gold mining compound. The dispatcher's voice crackled with something unusual, hesitation, maybe fear. She said the name once, quietly, like saying it louder might summon something. Damian Corvus. I knew that name. Everyone in this city knew that name. The Corvus family owned half the gold mines in the western states, their fortune built on extraction, on pulling precious metal from the earth's throat and turning it into power, into influence, into the kind of money that makes laws bend and people disappear. I arrived at the scene before the full forensics team. The desert night was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you think about mortality. Route 47 stretched out like a black ribbon under the half-moon, and there, about 50 yards from the compound's southern gate, was the Ducati Panigale Vi 4, cherry red, custom paint job that probably cost more than my annual salary, crumpled against a concrete barrier. The bike's front wheel was twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn, and there, sprawled on the asphalt like a fallen angel, was Damian Corvus. I'd seen him before, of course, in magazines, on the news, at charity galas where the champagne cost more per bottle than most people's rent. He was 42, dashingly handsome in that way that money enhances, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that always seemed to be looking past you, towards some horizon only he could see. But the Damian I'd seen in those glossy photos was always in tailored suits, shaking hands with politicians, cutting ribbons at new mining facilities. What I didn't know until I started investigating his life was that at night, he shed that skin. At night, Damian Corvus became someone else, a man who strapped on leather, who pushed his motorcycle to speeds that flirted with death, who rode the desert roads like he was trying to outrun his own shadow. His body lay face up, arms spread wide. Blood pooled beneath his head, dark and thick in the moonlight. His neck was bent at an impossible angle. I didn't need the coroner to tell me he was dead. I could see death in the stillness of his chest, in the glassy emptiness of his eyes that stared up at the stars his money could never buy. But what caught my attention, what made my detective's instinct flare up like a match in the dark, was the helmet. It lay about 6 feet from his body, a custom piece, matte black with gold leaf patterns that traced along the sides like veins of precious metal. The visor was shattered, the shell cracked down the middle. I crouched beside it, my flashlight playing over the damage. This helmet had taken an impact, a serious one. I could see fragments of the visor scattered across the asphalt like tiny stars. I pulled out an evidence bag, the heavy-duty kind we use for critical items, and I placed the helmet inside carefully. I sealed it with evidence tape, signed my name across the seal in black permanent marker, Detective M. Aldridge, 2237, March 14th. I recorded it in my evidence log. I took photographs from 4 angles. I did everything by the book because even though Damian Corvus was a billionaire, even though his family's lawyers were probably already warming up their vocal cords to scream about jurisdiction and privacy, I was going to work this case clean. The forensics team arrived, and we processed the scene for 3 hours. Skid marks suggested he'd been going at least 90 miles per hour when he lost control. No other vehicles involved. No sign of mechanical failure on preliminary examination. Just a man, a machine, and a moment of fatal miscalculation. By 2 in the morning, we had the body bagged and loaded, the bike impounded, and all evidence cataloged and secured. I personally delivered the helmet to the evidence locker at the precinct, watched the clerk scan it in, watched her place it on the shelf in the climate-controlled room where we keep items that might be needed for trial. The timestamp on the security camera in the evidence room read AO3, 14 a.m., March 15th. I remember thinking, as I walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, that this case would be straightforward. Rich man drives too fast, pays the ultimate price. Tragic but simple. I was wrong. God help me. I was so catastrophically wrong. 2 days later, I was at Corvus Tower, the family's headquarters in the heart of the financial district, a gleaming spire of glass and gold-plated steel that caught the morning sun like a blade. I was there to interview Damien's widow, Selene Corvus. The family had been cooperative on the surface, providing access to Damien's personal effects, his calendar, his financial records. But there was something underneath that cooperation, something that felt like a current running beneath still water, the kind of current that drowns you before you realize you're in trouble. Selene Corvus was 38, elegant in the way that money and good genes combined to create something almost otherworldly. She received me in Damien's top-floor office, a space that felt more like a museum than a workplace. Gold artifacts from ancient civilizations lined the shelves. Incan masks, Egyptian amulets, Roman coins. Damien had been a collector, apparently, obsessed with gold in all its forms. Selene sat behind his massive desk, her hands folded, her eyes dry but ringed with the purple shadows of sleeplessness. "Detective Aldridge," she said, her voice smooth but hollow, like a bell that's been struck too many times. "Thank you for coming. I want to help however I can. Damien he was complicated, but he was my husband." I sat across from her, my notebook open. "Mrs. Corvus, I need to understand your husband's state of mind in the days before his death. Had he been troubled? Anxious? Was there anything unusual in his behavior?" She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes, calculation, maybe, or fear. "Damien was always troubled, Detective. That's what made him ride those motorcycles. That's what made him race through the desert at midnight like he was being chased by demons. He couldn't sit still, he couldn't rest. Ever since his brother died, She stopped abruptly, her lips pressing into a thin line. "His brother?" I leaned forward. I wasn't aware Damien had a brother. Selene's expression shuddered. Didn't. I misspoke. Damien was an only child. But her hands tightened on the desk, knuckles going white. I made a note. People don't misspeak about dead siblings unless there's something there, something buried. "Mrs. Corvus, I'll need access to the security footage from your properties. Damien's movements in the hours before his death could be relevant." "Of course." She pressed a button on the desk intercom. "Gregory, please provide Detective Aldridge with whatever security access he requires." She looked back at me, and for just a second I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Detective, I need to know, was it really an accident? Or did someone want my husband dead?" That question haunted me as I spent the next several hours in Corvus Tower's security center, reviewing footage with Gregory, the head of their security operations. Gregory was ex-military, crew-cut and cold eyes, the kind of man who saw everything as a potential threat. He pulled up footage from a dozen cameras, Damien's penthouse, the garage, the office, the private lounge. We watched Damien's last day unfold in silent, time-stamped segments. He'd been at the office until 7 p.m., in a meeting with company lawyers about a new mining acquisition in Nevada. He'd left alone, taken his private elevator down to the garage, strapped on his leather jacket, and ridden off on the Ducati at 7:43 p.m. "Did he do this often?" I asked Gregory. "The night rides?" Gregory nodded. 3-4 times a week, always alone, always the same route, out to Route 47, loops around the mining compound, sometimes rides for hours. Mr. Corvus said it cleared his head, said it was the only time he felt free. I made notes, half listening, my eyes scanning the monitors. And then Gregory pulled up footage from the Corvus Jewel Gallery, a high-end boutique the family owned downtown, famous for custom pieces made from their own mined gold. "This is from the night of the accident," Gregory said. "We review all feeds from family businesses. Standard protocol." The timestamp read March 14th, 11:27 p.m. The gallery was closed, dark except for security lighting. And then the front door opened, and a figure stepped inside. My blood turned to ice. It was Damien Corvus. I recognized the leather jacket immediately, black with gold zippers, custom made. I recognized the build, the way he moved with that confident, prowling grace. But what made my heart stop, what made my breath catch in my throat like I'd been punched, was what he was carrying in his hands. The helmet, that matte black helmet with gold leaf patterns. I watched paralyzed as the figure moved deeper into the gallery, stopped in front of a display case, and lifted the helmet to his head. He put it on slowly, adjusting the fit, his movements casual, unhurried. The timestamp on the video read 0:42 a.m. March 15th, 2 hours after I'd found Damien Corvus dead on Route 47. 2 hours after I'd collected that helmet, sealed it, signed it, photographed it. 2 hours after I'd watched his corpse get loaded into the coroner's van. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. Gregory leaned closer to the screen, his brow furrowing. That can't be Mr. Corvus. Sir, you said he died at 10:37. This footage is time-stamped almost 2 hours later." I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. "I need that footage, all of it, every camera angle. I need it now." We spent 3 hours reviewing every second of that gallery footage. The figure appeared on 3 different cameras, entering through the front door with what looked like a key, moving through the gallery, putting on the helmet, then leaving through the same door at 1:03 a.m. The footage was clear, high definition, no glitches, no temporal anomalies. The timestamp was synchronized with the main Corvus security network, validated by atomic clock. There was no error. This wasn't a recording from a different night. Every other detail in the gallery matched March 15th, from the position of recently moved display cases to a cleaning crew's equipment visible in the background, logged as being there that specific night. But the impossibility remained, screaming at me from the screen. How could a dead man walk into a building 2 hours after his death and put on a helmet that was locked in an evidence room? I went back to the precinct at 4 in the morning, my mind racing through possibilities, each one more insane than the last. I went straight to the evidence locker, showed my badge to the night clerk, and demanded to see the helmet. She looked at me like I was crazy. It was 4 a.m., and I probably looked half wild. But she pulled up the log, verified my access, and walked me into the climate-controlled room. The helmet was exactly where it should be, sitting on shelf C17, sealed in its evidence bag. My signature was still there across the seal, undisturbed. I held the bag up to the light, examining it from every angle. The seal was intact. The helmet inside was the same one I'd collected. Same damage pattern, same gold leaf design, same shattered visor. I stood there in that cold, sterile room, holding a piece of evidence that couldn't possibly exist in 2 places at once, and I felt my grip on reality start to slip. Over the next week, I investigated every rational explanation. I considered twins, but every record showed Damien Corvus was an only child. I checked for body doubles, for elaborate hoaxes, for corporate espionage schemes involving fake deaths. Nothing fit. I had the helmet analyzed for fingerprints. Damien's prints were all over it, along with traces of his DNA from skin cells and hair. I had the coroner re-examine the body. It was definitely Damien Corvus, identified through dental records, fingerprints, and DNA comparison with family samples. But then I found something. A note, hidden in Damien's private safe in his penthouse, which Celine finally gave me access to after I threatened to get a warrant. The note was handwritten, dated 3 days before his death. If you're reading this, then I'm probably dead, and you probably think you know what happened. You don't. Ask Celine about Dorian. Ask her why she keeps visiting the west wing of the mining compound every Thursday. Ask her what we buried in 1997. The truth has a twin, detective, and so do I. Dorian. Celine had started to say something about a brother, then stopped herself. I pulled every record I could find on the Corvus family, going back decades, and there, buried in archived newspaper clippings from 1997, I found a tiny obituary. Dorian Corvus, age 19, beloved son, died in a mining accident. Survived by twin brother Damien and parents. Damien had a twin brother, a twin who supposedly died 28 years ago. I confronted Celine at the mining compound. She'd been there, as the note suggested, on a Thursday afternoon. I found her in a private wing of the facility, in a room that looked like a medical suite. Monitors, IV stands, a hospital bed. And in that bed, unconscious, hooked up to machines, was a man who looked exactly like Damien Corvus. Celine didn't run, she didn't scream. She just looked at me with those hollow eyes and said, "You found him." "Dorian," I said. "He's not dead." "He should be dead," Celine whispered. The accident in 1997, he was brain damaged in a vegetative state. The family told everyone he died because they couldn't bear the shame of having an imperfect son. They've kept him here, hidden, on life support for 28 years. Damien visited him every week, and on the night Damien died, he was here. He came to say goodbye to his brother before he went on that ride. He told me he was tired of living a lie, tired of pretending Dorian never existed. He said he was going to expose everything, the cover-up, the family secrets, all of it. My mind raced. The security footage, Damien set it up, Celine said, her voice breaking. Weeks ago, he recorded himself in the gallery, wearing his riding gear, putting on his helmet. He programmed it to play at specific timestamp, 2 hours after his scheduled ride. He wanted to create a paradox, something that would force investigators to dig deeper. He wanted you to find Dorian. He wanted the truth to come out, even if he had to die to make it happen. I felt sick. So the accident was an accident, Celine sobbed. Damien wanted the truth exposed, but he didn't plan to die that night. He just rode too fast like always. He lost control. And his elaborate plan to expose his family's lies became something else. A ghost story, an impossible mystery. But now you know, Detective. Now you know the truth. I stood there, looking at the man in the bed who would never wake up, who'd been erased from existence for nearly 3 decades to protect a family's reputation. I thought about the helmet, the sealed evidence, the security footage that had been manufactured to create an impossibility. Damien Corvus had turned his own death into a puzzle, a beacon to guide someone like me to this moment. But here's what keeps me awake at night. I checked the helmet again after Celine's confession. I had it re-examined by 3 independent labs, and every single one found something the first analysis had missed: 2 distinct sets of DNA. Damien's DNA was there, yes, but so was another set, with markers so similar they could only belong to an identical twin. And those twin DNA traces were fresh, deposited within hours of the accident. The security footage was fake, yes, but someone put that helmet on after Damien's death. Someone with his exact genetic profile. Someone who should have been in a coma, unable to move, unable to think. Unless Dorian Corvus woke up that night. Unless he watched his brother die through some window or camera, and in a moment of consciousness that medical science says shouldn't be possible. He got up, he walked to that gallery, and he put on his twin's helmet one last time before slipping back into the darkness. The Corvus family paid to make my investigation disappear. The case was closed as accidental death. Dorian remains in that hidden room, his machines still breathing for him. Celine moved away to Europe, I heard, and I'm left with a helmet that exists in 2 places at once, touched by a dead man and his supposedly comatose twin, proof of something that couldn't have happened but did. So I ask you, what do you do when evidence proves the impossible? When the truth has a twin and you can't tell which one is real? When a family's power is so absolute they can erase a son from existence and make his brother's death into a riddle wrapped in gold and lies? Would you have kept digging? Or would you have taken the money and let the dead keep their secrets? Subscribe to the channel and leave your like for more stories of crimes, secrets of powerful families, and investigations that no one dares to tell until the next case.